Winter arrived with a quiet insistence, coating the city in frost and shadow. The streets reflected the muted glow of street lamps, and the world seemed slower, more deliberate. Alexander and I had settled into a rhythm that felt both familiar and new. It wasn't the heady rush of the first months anymore. It was something steadier, deeper. Yet beneath the comfort, there was a subtle tension I couldn't quite name. A quiet question of what the future held. One evening just after Christmas, he invited me to his loft without giving me a reason. I arrived to find the space dimly lit, warm with the scent of spiced candles. A single envelope rested on the coffee table, addressed in his precise hand. I picked it up cautiously. "Open it," he said, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed but a nervous edge in his posture. Inside was a photograph, not one I recognized, not a casual snapshot from the internet, but a picture of a woman in a vintage dress standing in a sunlit garden. Her smile was familiar, though I couldn't place it. On the back, written in faded ink, "For when you are ready to know." I looked up at him, confusion and something sharper. Curiosity, maybe fear, in my eyes. "What is this?" Alexander swallowed, the mask of composure faltering for the first time in months. "That's my mother, before I was born. There's something about my family you haven't met, something I've kept hidden. Not because I don't trust you, but because I wasn't ready for anyone to see it." I felt the pulse of intrigue tighten in my chest. "Hidden how?" I asked, cautious but drawn forward. He gestured toward the loft's small library. "Come, sit." We sat among shelves crowded with books, photographs, and artifacts. He pulled out an old journal, its leather cracked and well-used. He opened it gently, as though it contained fragile secrets. The pages were filled with precise handwriting, but the words themselves were cryptic. Sketches of buildings, maps of places I didn't recognize, notes in a language I couldn't decipher immediately. "This belonged to my grandfather," he said quietly. "He disappeared when my father was young. No one really knows why. My parents never spoke of it. But I found the journal a few years ago, and the more I read, the more I realized there were things about my family, about the people I come from, that I didn't understand." I traced a finger along the journal's spine, mesmerized despite the unease settling over me. "And you're telling me now because I trust you," he said simply. "And because the anniversary project, meeting you, it made me realize I want someone who sees all of me, not just the part I present to the world, not just the confident, composed Alexander everyone knows, but all of it." I felt my breath catch. This wasn't just intimacy, it was revelation. A window into a life far more complicated than the one I had glimpsed, and I wanted to step through that window. He flipped the journal open to a particular page, and my eyes widened. There were coordinates, numbers, and a note. "If you follow, you will find the place where truth begins." I looked at him, heart hammering. "Truth begins where?" Alexander hesitated. "I don't know entirely. But I need to go. I've been avoiding it for years, afraid of what I might find. And I don't want to go alone." "Go where?" "To the estate my grandfather supposedly disappeared from. It's in the countryside, remote, forgotten. But the journal, it's more than sketches and notes. It's a map. I've tried to ignore it, but I can't anymore." The air between us shifted. The story I thought I knew, the story of us, of recovery, of slow love, was branching into something entirely unknown. Something dangerous, something magnetic. "You want me to come with you?" I said carefully. "I do," he said, voice steady but vulnerable. "Not because I think you owe me anything, but because I don't want to face it without someone who sees me. Someone I trust." I closed my eyes for a long moment, considering. It wasn't just adventure. It wasn't just curiosity. It was a choice to step into a story with no guarantees, with the possibility of risk, with the thrill of discovering truths hidden for decades. Finally, I nodded. "Then we go." The journey began at dawn 2 days later. The car hummed along misted highways, and the countryside unfolded like a storybook. Rolling fields, forests catching the first frost of winter, lonely stone cottages that looked like they belonged in another century. Alexander drove in silence for most of the ride, his hand occasionally brushing mine on the console, a quiet reassurance. As we neared the coordinates, the air thickened. Fog swirled along narrow lanes, skeletal trees reaching like fingers across the road. The GPS beeped insistently, guiding us down a dirt path that seemed to have been forgotten by time. At the end, shrouded in fog, a massive estate appeared. Stone walls cracked with age, ivy crawling up the sides, windows dark, but alive with history. "This is it," Alexander whispered. We stepped out, boots crunching on frost-bitten leaves. There was an almost imperceptible hum, like the air itself held its breath. I felt my skin prickle. The estate was beautiful, eerie and deserted. There was a gate hanging on one hinge, creaking with every gust of wind, as though the house itself were warning us. Alexander led the way, journal in hand. Each room we entered was more haunting than the last. A library with books covered in dust, a drawing room with faded tapestries, portraits of men and women who seemed to watch our every move. And then we found the basement door, hidden behind a tapestry depicting a pastoral scene. He hesitated. This is where it all begins," he said. We descended the creaking stairs together, hearts pounding. The basement smelled of damp earth and old wood, and there, in a corner, was a locked chest, intricate with carvings I didn't understand, but instinctively knew were significant. Alexander knelt, running his fingers over the carvings. "I think this belonged to my grandfather," he murmured. "Everything he left behind, truths, perhaps dangers, maybe even answers about why he vanished. It's in here." The lock clicked open surprisingly easily, as though the chest had been waiting decades for someone worthy to arrive. Inside were papers, photographs, and small trinkets, keys, medals, and a compass that looked impossibly old. Each item carried weight, history, and a story untold. Alexander looked at me, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. "We have to figure this out." "Together." I reached out, touching his hand. "Then we will," I said. And in that moment, the fragile boundaries of our world, the ordinary life, the predictable routines, the office walls, fell away. We were stepping into something far larger, a mystery spanning generations, a legacy forgotten, and a bond tested by uncertainty and curiosity alike. The chest was just the beginning, and as I looked at Alexander, standing there beside me with a mix of determination and awe, I knew that whatever came next, we would face it together, not because we were fearless, but because we had chosen each other in a world that demanded courage just to keep moving forward. The air shifted. A chill ran through the basement, and the compass in the chest trembled, pointing not north but somewhere else, somewhere that would change everything. "Are you ready?" he asked, voice low. I nodded, heart racing. "I'm ready," and with that we stepped into the unknown. The compass needle quivered, then settled, pointing toward a narrow corridor at the far end of the basement. The air felt heavier there, thick with dust, and the faint metallic scent of something long buried. Alexander pulled a flashlight from his jacket pocket and clicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness like a lifeline. "Stay close," he said, his voice steady but low. I nodded, gripping his arm lightly as we followed the compass's direction. The corridor narrowed quickly, forcing us to walk single file. The walls were lined with old stone, cold and rough against my fingertips, and I felt the hum of anticipation building in my chest. Each step echoed in the silence, as though the house itself was listening, waiting for us to awaken the secrets it had kept for decades. At the end of the corridor was a heavy wooden door, reinforced with iron bands. The compass trembled violently in Alexander's hand. "This is it," he whispered. "This is where my grandfather disappeared." I swallowed, the weight of history pressing on my chest. "Do you think we'll find him?" He shook his head slowly. "Not him, but something he left behind, something important enough that it needed to be hidden, protected. I've always wondered why the stories stopped, why my father never mentioned it. Maybe this is the answer." Together we pushed the door open. Dust swirled into the air, catching the flashlight's beam. The room inside was small but meticulously arranged, as though someone had left in a hurry yet cared enough to preserve order. In the center stood a pedestal, and on it, a single leather-bound book, aged and worn. Its cover was embossed with the same strange symbols as the chest downstairs. Alexander approached it reverently. This is it," he breathed. He opened the book slowly, the pages yellowed and fragile. The handwriting was precise, but not in any language I recognized. Symbols intertwined with sketches of machines, diagrams of structures, and notes that seemed impossible, like a blueprint for something far ahead of its time. I peered over his shoulder, feeling a mixture of awe and unease. "What is it?" I asked. "I don't know yet," he admitted. But it's clear he was working on something extraordinary, something he couldn't share with anyone, and judging by the warnings scattered throughout, something dangerous if it fell into the wrong hands. A cold draft blew through the room, and I shivered despite the thick layers I was wearing. The realization hit me suddenly. This was no longer about family history or closure. This was about a mystery that had been dormant for decades, and we had just awakened it. Alexander looked up at me, eyes wide. "Are you sure you want to do this? There's no turning back once we start deciphering this. It could change everything, even our lives." I hesitated, my hand brushing over his. The fear was real, tangible. But so was the pull of discovery, the thrill of stepping into the unknown with him by my side. "I'm sure," I said, voice steady. "Whatever it is, we face it together." A flicker of relief passed across his face, and then determination settled in. "Then we start now." He traced his finger across the first page, reading aloud the strange symbols. As the words left his lips, a pattern emerged. The sketches began to make sense. The diagrams were not merely drawings. They were instructions, coordinates, formulas. My mind raced as I realized that his grandfather had been working on a project that was far ahead of its time. Something technological, perhaps even revolutionary. Hours passed as we pored over the book. Alexander's usual precision, combined with my intuition for patterns and details, made us an unexpectedly effective team. Every new symbol unlocked a small revelation. Every sketch hinted at a larger truth. And beneath the intellectual excitement, there was an undercurrent of intimacy. Our hands brushed over pages, our shoulders leaned together, and in the quiet, flickering light of the basement, the world outside ceased to exist. At some point, the compass began to spin wildly, as though reacting to something in the book. Alexander froze, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. "It's not just a map," he said. "It's a guide to something real, something hidden, and we're supposed to follow it." I felt a thrill unlike anything I'd experienced before. Danger, mystery, possibility, and him, Alexander, beside me, breathing the same air, facing the unknown together. "Then we follow it," I said simply. He nodded, closing the book carefully and tucking it under his arm. "Tomorrow we begin the journey, out there," he said, pointing toward the distant hills. "Is whatever he was protecting, hiding, or searching for, and it's been waiting for us for decades." We left the basement, the house looming behind us like a silent sentinel guarding its secrets. The night was crisp, the stars sharp points of light above us. I realized I hadn't felt this alive in years, not even before the anniversary project, not even during the slow rebuilding of my life. Fear and excitement mingled, a heady cocktail that made my chest ache in the best possible way. Alexander glanced at me, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You ready for tomorrow?" I took a deep breath, letting the cold night air fill my lungs. "I'm ready," I said, and this time there was no hesitation. Not in my words, not in my heart. Whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. Two people who had found each other in chaos, who had chosen connection over fear, curiosity over certainty. And as we drove back to the city, the mansion fading into darkness behind us, I knew one thing for certain. Our lives would never be the same again. The next morning, dawn crept over the city in pale pink and gold streaks, painting the skyline with quiet anticipation. Alexander and I met at his loft, backpacks slung over our shoulders, flashlights, notebooks, and a small assortment of tools packed carefully for the journey. The book rested between us on the passenger seat, its leather cover worn but weighty, as if it held centuries of expectation. We drove in silence at first, the hum of the engine filling the spaces between our thoughts. Every so often our hands brushed when reaching for the map Alexander had sketched from the book's instructions, and a jolt ran through me, both from the touch and the thrill of the unknown that lay ahead. After 2 hours, the city gave way to rolling hills and forests that stretched toward the horizon. The air was cleaner here, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Somewhere between anticipation and fear, the compass had begun to hum softly, as though guiding us not just physically, but through some invisible thread of destiny. Alexander pulled off the main road onto a narrow dirt path, wheels crunching over loose gravel. "We're close," he said, eyes flicking from the compass to the map, then back to the road ahead. "The first marker should be just beyond that ridge." I swallowed hard, my stomach twisting in a mixture of nerves and excitement. "And if we find something dangerous?" I asked quietly. He glanced at me, a half smile tugging at his lips. "Then we deal with it. Together. You're not alone in this." His reassurance was steady, grounding, and I felt a rush of warmth despite the chill in the morning air. The path ended at a clearing shrouded in mist. The forest seemed to hold its breath, shadows pooling beneath the trees. The compass spun wildly in Alexander's hand before finally settling, pointing toward a gnarled oak at the far edge of the clearing. Its bark was twisted and dark, roots rising like ancient fingers from the ground. "This is it," he whispered, voice almost reverent. "He marked this tree for a reason." I stepped closer, heart hammering, and noticed a faint carving in the bark, a series of symbols that matched those in the book. They glimmered faintly in the morning light, almost as if the tree itself remembered what it had witnessed. Alexander ran his fingers over the carvings, eyes narrowing in concentration. "There's a hollow," he murmured, crouching low. A small panel of bark shifted under his touch, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside lay a cylindrical container, tarnished but intact. He pulled it out carefully, brushing off years of dirt and decay. Inside the container were several folded papers, sealed with wax, bearing the same intricate symbol we'd seen on the book's cover. I held my breath as Alexander broke the seal, unfolding the first sheet. The writing was precise, geometric, almost mechanical, and alongside it were sketches that seemed to map the surrounding land with incredible accuracy. "Coordinates," I whispered. "And instructions." "Yes," Alexander said, eyes alight with excitement. "It's a path, a series of locations he wanted followed, each one revealing more of what he was working on. And it all starts here." We spent hours deciphering the first instructions, cross-referencing the sketches with our surroundings. Each clue led to another marker hidden beneath rocks, within hollow trees, or tucked in the earth beneath fallen logs. The forest seemed alive, as if it were watching us, testing our resolve. By late afternoon, we reached the edge of a cliff overlooking a narrow canyon. The final set of coordinates pointed toward a cavern below. Alexander studied the book, then the compass. "This is it," he said, voice barely audible over the wind. Whatever he wanted hidden. "It's down there." The holographic blueprint hovered in the cavern's still air, casting fractured light across the walls. Alexander studied it with intense focus, tracing patterns with his fingers as if he could feel the energy beneath the projection. I moved closer, my own curiosity mingling with a strange, rising tension. Every instinct told me this was more than a mechanical device. It was a puzzle, a challenge, something designed to test whoever dared to unlock it. "This is incredible," Alexander whispered almost reverently. It's a map and a machine at the same time. A network of ideas, calculations, and something else. Something beyond engineering. I crouched to examine the pedestal more closely. Tiny engravings, barely visible without the flashlight, lined the edges. Symbols I didn't recognize at first. But then, as I followed their flow, a pattern emerged. It wasn't just random. It was a sequence. "Alexander, I think it's expecting input," I said. "Not just activation, but understanding." His eyes met mine, sharp and electrified with excitement. "You mean we have to solve it?" I nodded slowly, feeling a thrill run through me. "Yes, it's a puzzle. Designed for someone who can see connections, someone who can think differently." The air seemed to thrum around us, almost alive with anticipation, as if the cavern itself was aware we had reached this point. Alexander's hands moved over the device with confidence born of skill and curiosity. "We've come this far. Let's see where it leads." Hours passed as we worked together. Each adjustment, each turn of a dial or press of a hidden button, caused the holographic network to shift, reorient, and glow in response. At first, the changes were small. A node here, a light flaring there. But gradually, patterns began to reveal themselves. I found myself leaning against him at one point, exhausted but exhilarated. "This isn't just a machine," I murmured. It's like it's alive. Like it wants something from us?" Alexander's eyes softened as he looked at me. "I've never seen you like this," he said quietly. "Focused, alive, brilliant. You've always been meticulous at work, but this is different. You're glowing." I flushed at his words, a warmth spreading through me that had nothing to do with the cavern's chilly air. But there was no time for sentiment now. The blueprint pulsed, urging us forward. By late evening, the network began to stabilize. The holographic map coalesced into a single glowing point. A destination, perhaps, or the heart of the puzzle. Alexander and I exchanged a glance, the unspoken question hanging between us. "Ready?" he asked. I nodded, heart hammering. "Ready." Together we activated the final sequence. The pedestal hummed, lights spinning faster, gears clicking with precision. A deep vibration resonated through the cavern, and a section of the wall slowly shifted, revealing a hidden passage beyond. The air that escaped was warm, scented faintly with earth and something metallic, something ancient and powerful. We stepped forward cautiously, flashlights cutting through darkness that felt almost liquid in its density. The passage was narrow, the walls etched with more symbols and intricate diagrams. The faint glow from the holographic projection behind us illuminated just enough to guide our steps. This is incredible," Alexander breathed. "We've never seen anything like this. Whoever designed this, was centuries ahead of his time." I paused, tracing the symbols with my fingers. It's a message," I realized aloud. "Not just instructions, but a record of thought, of knowledge. He left this for someone who could understand, someone who could continue it." The passage opened into a vast chamber, enormous in scale, with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadows. Strange devices, delicate and impossibly complex, lined the walls, connected by thin conduits that hummed faintly. In the center, a pedestal almost identical to the first held a second device, smaller, but with an intensity that made the hair on my arms stand on end. Alexander stepped forward, awestruck. This is a laboratory," he whispered. A mind unlike anything I've ever known. And he trusted us to find it. I swallowed, my chest tight with wonder and fear. Do we try to activate it? Alexander looked at me, searching my face. We can't leave it. But we have to be careful. One wrong move. We could destroy centuries of work. We approached together, hands brushing as we leaned over the pedestal. The symbols here were even more complex, almost organic in their flow, yet mirrored patterns from the book and the first device. The air thrummed, vibrating with the sense that the chamber was waiting for us. Step by step, we followed the instructions, each of us contributing to the process, our minds working in synchrony. The holographic display flared to life, more intricate than before, with nodes connecting in real time, revealing diagrams that hinted at technologies and principles far beyond our comprehension. And then the device spoke, not in words, but in vibrations, tones, a resonance that filled the cavern and somehow connected with the rhythm of our own pulses. Alexander looked at me, eyes wide. It knows we're here, he whispered. It's responding to us. I reached for his hand again, clutching it tightly. Then we keep going, together. The night deepened outside the cavern, but inside time seemed suspended. The puzzle demanded more than logic. It required intuition, courage, and trust. And as Alexander and I worked, side by side, the world outside faded entirely, leaving only the two of us, the device, and the unfolding mystery that would change everything we thought we knew. The resonance grew stronger, vibrating through the chamber and into our very bones. Alexander's hand tightened around mine, his knuckles white, but his eyes never left the device. The nodes on the holographic projection began to rearrange themselves, forming patterns that seemed intentional. Not random circuitry, but something almost like a language. I leaned closer, squinting. It's communicating. I whispered, my voice barely audible over the low hum. It's asking for understanding, not just activation. Alexander nodded, tracing the nodes with a finger. It's testing us, but what exactly does it want? Before I could answer, a beam of light shot from the central pedestal, enveloping us. It wasn't blinding, but warm. Almost alive. The air shimmered, carrying with it the faint scent of ozone and old paper. And then, faintly at first, voices echoed around us. Not words as we knew them, but impressions. Emotions, memories, sensations, fear, curiosity, excitement, loss, love, hope. My chest tightened. It's showing us feelings, experiences. Alexander swallowed hard. It's like it wants us to feel, to understand the mind that created it. Not just read it, but live it. As we moved deeper into the interaction, images began to form in the air. Vivid, almost holographic projections of someone's memories. A man in a workshop scribbling diagrams, pacing the floor as he tested inventions that seemed impossible. A woman watching him, laughing softly, supporting him, guiding him. The feeling of their bond was palpable, the devotion and brilliance interwoven. I shivered. This is personal. Whoever made this left themselves behind. Their mind, their heart, their life, all preserved here. Alexander's voice was tight. And they trusted us to find it, to understand it. Suddenly, one of the nodes pulsed sharply, and a sequence of images unfolded that made my stomach drop. It was not just technology, not just brilliance. It was warnings, schematics of dangerous devices, formulas that could be catastrophic if misused, records of experiments that failed and destroyed parts of the workshop, and alongside all of it, notes, careful, meticulous, and desperate. Protect it. Protect knowledge. Protect love. I turned to Alexander. This isn't just a puzzle. This is a responsibility. Whoever comes after, they have to be worthy. We can't fail. His hand covered mine again, the warmth grounding me. We won't. We'll figure it out together. We have to. Hours passed like minutes. Each solution we discovered unlocked a new layer of the device, each revelation more astonishing than the last. There was exhilaration, but also a creeping dread. What if we made a mistake? What if we weren't the right ones? Then, just when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm us, the final node pulsed. A gentle light bathed the chamber. The holographic projection solidified into a coherent message. Not in words, but in a feeling. Clarity, purpose, connection. The device had accepted us. We had passed its test. Alexander exhaled, a mix of relief and awe. We did it. I can't believe it. We actually did it. I leaned against him, my own heartbeat still racing. We unlocked it. Together it feels like it was waiting for us. The device hummed one last time, then powered down slowly, leaving the chamber silent but alive with an invisible energy. The warmth lingered, the feeling of connection between Alexander, me, and the mind that had built this place. We stood there, side by side, hands entwined, understanding that this experience had changed us, not just because we'd solved the puzzle, but because we had faced something vast and unknowable, and emerged connected, stronger, and profoundly changed. Alexander turned to me, his expression unguarded for the first time since we entered the cavern. "Vivian, we can't unsee this. We can't go back to ordinary life. Not after this, can we?" I shook my head slowly, a smile breaking across my face, despite the adrenaline still coursing through me. "No, we've seen too much. We've felt too much. And somehow, I think this is only the beginning." The following days were different. Ordinary life had a strange weight to it, as though the cavern, the device, and the echoes of its creator's mind had left an imprint on reality itself. Alexander and I returned to our routines, but something had shifted. Even the office felt smaller, muted, as though our experience had expanded us beyond its walls. We tried to carry on as normal, but every glance, every word, exchanged between us held layers of unspoken understanding. Our hands would brush as we passed folders. In meetings, we would catch each other's eye, sharing a silent acknowledgement of the extraordinary secret we now held between us. It was exhilarating, terrifying, and intimate in ways neither of us had anticipated. Then one morning a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a thin envelope with a single sheet of paper. I unfolded it carefully. The words were written in a looping script I didn't recognize, but the meaning was unmistakable. "You've unlocked the first layer. The truth lies deeper. Be prepared. Not all is as it seems." I froze, the paper trembling in my hands. Alexander leaned over my shoulder. "What is it?" he asked, tone steady but alert. I handed it to him. His eyes scanned the page, darkening as he read. "It's from them, the creator. They're guiding us further. This isn't finished." I swallowed hard. "What do we do?" He looked at me, the weight of responsibility pressing down on both of us. "We follow it. Together. We have to." That evening we returned to the cavern. The device remained dormant, yet the air around it felt alive, anticipating our return. Alexander approached the pedestal and traced his fingers over the cold metal. Then he pressed a sequence of nodes, the same we had unlocked before, and the device sprang to life again. But this time, differently. Holographic projections spiraled into the air, forming not just images but entire environments. Rooms from the creator's life, laboratories, libraries, private studies, flashed before us. Each space held clues, not just to inventions and formulas, but to the mind of the person who had built all of this. Emotions swirled through the projections. Desperation, brilliance, loneliness, hope. I realized, with a chill creeping over me, that we weren't just observing. We were walking through the memories themselves. The line between past and present blurred. The voices we'd felt before were now distinct, layered with urgency. Learn, protect, understand. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. I had no sense of time anymore. Each discovery came with new challenges. puzzles embedded in blueprints, cryptic sequences that required intuition as much as logic. Alexander and I worked seamlessly, each step deepening our bond. But there was an undercurrent of unease, a constant whisper of warning we couldn't ignore. Finally, we reached a projection of the creator themselves. A woman, brilliant eyes, hair pulled back, standing over a massive, intricate machine. She looked straight at us, her gaze piercing, almost alive. Alexander stepped forward. "You're showing yourself to us?" The projection nodded, emotion flooding through the hologram. Words appeared alongside her image. "Not all truths are safe. The knowledge you seek carries weight. Choices you make will echo beyond your understanding. Trust your instincts. Trust each other." I felt my pulse quicken. "This is bigger than we imagined. This isn't just about knowledge. It's a responsibility, a burden." She nodded again. Then the projection dissolved, leaving only the hum of the device. Silence hung over the cavern, heavy and expectant. Alexander reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. We knew this would be more than we expected. "But we're in it, together. No turning back." I nodded, drawing strength from his presence. "Together." As we left the cavern that night, the city lights spread beneath us, a sea of possibilities. We carried with us the weight of responsibility, the thrill of discovery, and a bond forged in the crucible of something extraordinary. Whatever lay ahead, we knew one thing. The journey was only beginning, and nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, the city seemed ordinary, almost painfully so, but the shadow of the device and its revelations lingered in my mind. At the office, Alexander and I moved through our routines with a practiced calm, but every glance, every subtle gesture carried the weight of what we now knew. The world outside hadn't changed, but we had, and that made every mundane interaction feel surreal. By late afternoon, a subtle vibration on my phone made me pause. A message appeared. No number, just a single line. "You've taken the first step. The next is harder. Midnight, the rooftop, alone." I stared at the screen, heart hammering. "Alexander," I whispered when I saw him across the office, his attention caught by my sudden pallor. I showed him the message. He frowned, running a hand through his hair. "They're escalating. We can't ignore this." "I know," I said, voice trembling. "But it says alone." He studied me, his gaze intense. "Then you need to go. I'll be close by watching. If anything happens, anything, you'll signal me." I nodded, swallowing my fear. Midnight came with a suffocating quiet. The city slept beneath me, unaware of what was about to unfold. I stepped onto the rooftop, the wind slicing through my coat, carrying a scent of rain and concrete. At the far edge, a small device blinked with soft blue light, projecting a delicate holographic symbol in the air. It pulsed as though alive, beckoning. I approached cautiously. "Hello?" My voice sounded fragile against the night. The hologram shifted, forming a figure, a shadowy version of the creator. Her voice, impossibly clear and echoing, filled the rooftop. "Vivian, the next phase tests courage. Not intelligence, not skill. Courage. You must face what you fear most, and not just for yourself, but for what is coming." I felt a chill creep through me. What do you mean?" "Look down." I obeyed, peering over the edge. Below, the street seemed empty, except for a figure standing under a flickering streetlight. A distorted version of myself, mirroring every insecurity, fear, and doubt I'd tried to bury. The hologram continued. "Confront your shadow. Accept it, or it will define you." My knees threatened to buckle. I realized this was more than a puzzle or a test of intellect. It was psychological, deeply personal. I stepped forward slowly. I accept it." The figure below responded, mimicking my every movement. I spoke, my voice stronger now. "I am more than my fear, more than my failure, more than the moments I wanted to give up." The shadow hesitated, then slowly began to dissolve into the night air, leaving only a soft, Glowing mist. The hologram smiled faintly, the pulse of its light softening. Courage acknowledged. Trust is rewarded. But this is only the beginning. Tomorrow you will choose. Knowledge or safety. Choose wisely. And just like that, the projection vanished. I was alone again, standing on the rooftop with the wind cutting through me. Heart racing, but a strange sense of clarity settling in. I knew, as I descended back into the quiet streets, that nothing would ever be ordinary again. The device, the creator, the shadows of ourselves. It was all real, and Alexander would need to know everything. When I returned to the apartment, he was waiting, alert and tense. I recounted everything, every word, every feeling. He listened silently, then took my hands in his. "This is bigger than we imagined," he said, voice steady but low. "But we face it together, no matter what comes next." I nodded, leaning into his embrace, feeling the strange mix of fear and exhilaration. Together we would step into the unknown. Together we would face whatever the Creator had in store, and whatever secrets the device was still hiding. Outside, the city slept, unaware that two ordinary people had begun a journey that would blur the lines between reality, fear, and courage, and that each choice from here on would ripple far beyond anything we could yet imagine. The night outside the observatory was alive with wind and shadows. I stumbled from the crumbling building, my mind still buzzing with the flood of images, calculations, and cryptic voices. The cube's glow was gone, but its weight lingered inside me like a pulse I couldn't ignore. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, and sent Alexander a single word. "It's done." Moments later, he called. "Vivian, are you okay?" His voice was calm, but I could hear the underlying tension. I think so," I whispered. "It's incredible. Terrifying. I can't even—" "You're safe now," he interrupted. "Drive carefully. I'll meet you." The drive back into the city felt surreal. Streetlights blurred past like streaks of memory, and the familiar skyline of downtown looked alien. Every shadow seemed to twist with possibility. Every honking horn a reminder that the world outside was still moving, still unaware of what I had just encountered. By the time I arrived at my apartment, Alexander was already there, leaning against the door frame, arms crossed, a mixture of relief and exasperation on his face. "You scared me half to death," he said. His tone softened. "I told you to wait." "I had to know," I admitted, collapsing onto the couch. My mind felt overloaded, my body trembling with adrenaline. "I had to see it for myself." He crouched beside me, hand resting on my knee. "And now you've seen it. But you're not alone, Vivian. We'll figure this out together." I nodded, but sleep would not come that night. The visions lingered. The vast libraries of forbidden knowledge, cryptic messages, glimpses of timelines that didn't belong to me. I realized then that the cube was not merely a tool or artifact. It was a key to secrets that the world was not ready for, and a key that came with danger. Over the next few days, the world around me seemed to shift subtly. Every face on the street carried weight I hadn't noticed before. Every shadow held a potential threat. Emails from unknown senders began appearing in my inbox, encrypted messages that vanished if I tried to open them. Packages were left at my doorstep, some harmless, some ominous. Alexander and I spoke in hushed tones, sharing only fragments, never revealing the full scope of what we suspected. He was as meticulous as ever, but I noticed a change. Even his control, his precise planning, carried an edge of tension. Late nights in the office were no longer about reports or parties. They were about research, analyzing patterns in the messages, mapping connections between seemingly unrelated events. And slowly, a pattern emerged. The cube was just one of many artifacts, each containing knowledge powerful enough to disrupt governments, corporations, and even reality as we knew it. One evening, as we sat surrounded by open books, maps, and glowing screens, Alexander paused, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. "Vivian, this isn't just a choice about knowledge or safety. This is about responsibility. If we follow this path, there's no turning back. Every decision we make from here will ripple outward. Some of it could be irreversible. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I know, but I can't pretend I didn't choose it. I can't ignore what I saw. He nodded. I'm not saying you shouldn't have. Just be ready. There are people who will want it. Want you. And not all of them will be reasonable. The following days became a tense game of cat and mouse. Encrypted messages arrived faster, sometimes containing warnings, sometimes riddles. We deciphered patterns, traced origins, and occasionally found ourselves following clues that led to abandoned warehouses, forgotten libraries, and hidden rooms in the city's oldest buildings. The cube's influence seemed to reach far and wide. It had awakened something that had been waiting for centuries. Through it all, Alexander remained my anchor. His presence reminded me that even amid chaos and uncertainty, we could find a semblance of normalcy. Mornings with coffee, evening walks, small dinners. We clung to these routines as if they could shield us from the storm. But the storm was relentless. One night, a message arrived that chilled me to the bone. You have the cube. You know too much. If you move tomorrow, the consequences will be final. Choose wisely, or lose everything. We debated whether to flee, destroy the cube, or attempt to secure it in a location no one could reach. Each option carried risks we could barely quantify. I found myself thinking back to the first time Alexander noticed me crying at my desk. 6 months ago. That moment had felt like the beginning of everything. But I realized now that the real beginning was the moment I had touched the cube. That was the true point of no return. The next morning we made our plan. Alexander insisted on staying close, refusing to let me face this alone. Together we navigated through shadowed streets, side alleys, and abandoned stations, following the latest clue to a library beneath the city. There, hidden behind ancient shelves and dust-covered manuscripts, was another cube, pulsing faintly in the darkness. I approached. My pulse quickened. I reached out again, this time with Alexander's hand hovering just behind mine, steadying me. The cube recognized me, as if it remembered the first encounter, and the glow returned, brighter than ever. Images, voices, and numbers filled my mind. But now Alexander was there with me. We shared the flood, splitting the knowledge, protecting each other from the overwhelm. When it ended, we collapsed against the wall, breathless, trembling, eyes wide with unspoken understanding. We're in this together. Alexander said, voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I agreed. And no matter what happens, we face it together. But the night was far from over. Through the darkness outside, unseen eyes watched us, calculating, waiting. The world had shifted. Life as we knew it was gone. And ahead lay a journey that would test every part of us. Our courage, our intellect, our hearts. And somehow, in the middle of danger, mystery, and chaos, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. The absolute certainty that I wasn't alone. The following morning, the city seemed unusually quiet, as if it too sensed the tension that now clung to us. We returned to my apartment, carrying the cube in a protective case Alexander had built. Every step felt heavier than the last. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, was already tracking us. The shadows in the hallways seemed to linger longer than they should. The hum of the refrigerator was no longer mundane. It sounded like it might be listening. Alexander set the case on the table and turned to me, his expression grave. We need to decide what comes next. The cube. It isn't just a puzzle. It's a network, a library, a weapon. If it falls into the wrong hands, his voice trailed, but the implication hung like a storm cloud. I swallowed hard, trying to calm the sudden surge of panic rising in my chest. We can't let them have it, I said firmly. We're the only ones who know how to control it, or even understand it. He nodded, eyes locking onto mine. Exactly, but that means hiding it, studying it, and, most importantly, trusting each other completely. There's no room for hesitation, no mistakes. The weight of his words settled over me. Every instinct screamed danger, but another part of me, a part that had been dormant for years, thrilled at the challenge. I was no longer just the woman who cried at her desk over unpaid bills. I was Vivian, the one who had seen the impossible and survived. And now I had a partner, Alexander, who saw me as capable, intelligent, and brave. We spent the next few days in a strange combination of normalcy and obsession. During the day, we maintained our office routines, meetings, reports, emails. We smiled, we organized, we appeared mundane to everyone else. But once the sun dipped below the horizon, we were consumed by the cube. It started subtly at first. Alexander noticed small anomalies in its glow, patterns that seemed almost like messages. I began keeping a journal of my observations, sketches of shapes that emerged when I traced my fingers along its edges, notes of fleeting images that appeared in the corner of my vision. Then came the first real sign that we were not alone. A black SUV appeared on the street outside my apartment one evening. At first, I thought it was coincidence. But when it was there the next night, and the night after, the pattern became undeniable. Someone was watching, someone who knew about the cube. Alexander took my hand that evening, his thumb tracing circles over my knuckles. "We need to move," he said quietly. "Pack what you need. I've arranged a safe house outside the city." My heart raced, not just from fear, but from the thrill of it. Adventure had always been something I read about, not lived. And yet here I was, stepping into something larger than myself, with someone I trusted more than anyone. We left just before dawn, carrying only essentials and the cube in its protective case. The streets were empty, mist curling around the streetlights like silent guardians. I glanced at Alexander, whose jaw was set, eyes scanning every shadow. "Do you think they'll follow?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "They'll try," he admitted, "but we'll be ready." The safe house was a secluded cabin on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by trees and a small frozen lake that reflected the pale winter moon. Inside it was sparse but functional, enough space to work, plan, and hide. We set up a makeshift lab for the cube, tables, laptops, cameras, and encryption devices. For hours we studied it, testing its reactions, trying to understand its logic. The cube seemed to respond to thought patterns, to emotional cues, almost as if it had a consciousness of its own. One night, as I traced a finger over one of its intricate carvings, a vision struck me. A room filled with hundreds of cubes, each pulsing, each whispering secrets I could almost understand but not fully grasp. I gasped, pulling my hand back. Alexander grabbed my shoulder. "Vivian, are you okay?" I saw something," I whispered. "Something big. Too big for us to understand alone." He nodded, his expression unreadable. "Then we won't have to." That was when the messages started. Digital, encrypted, and threatening. Someone was not just watching us. They were orchestrating, guiding, and waiting. The first message appeared on my laptop screen in glowing letters. "Stop, or lose everything you hold dear." Alexander's hand found mine again, steadying me. "They're testing us," he said. "Trying to intimidate us. But we're not stopping. Not now. Not ever." Fear mingled with exhilaration. Every cell in my body was alert, alive. This was no longer about bills or loneliness. It was about survival, knowledge, and the kind of partnership I had never imagined. Together we could face anything. That night we made a vow to protect the cube, each other, and the knowledge it contained, to face the unseen forces that hunted us, to trust implicitly, and somewhere deep inside, I realized that this adventure, this dangerous, impossible, exhilarating journey, was as much about discovering who we were as it was about what we were protecting. I was no longer the woman crying at her desk. I was Vivian, and I was not alone. The following morning, the tension in the safe house was palpable. Alexander was already awake, reviewing code sequences on his laptop. The cube sat between us on the table, glowing faintly like it was aware of our anxiety. I poured coffee into 2 mugs, handing one to him. "We can't let them see fear," he said quietly, not looking up. "Every reaction we have, every movement, it could be feeding them. They're intelligent, patient, dangerous." I nodded, my hands trembling slightly. "I know, but how do we even start? The cube, it's like nothing I've ever seen. It reacts almost alive." He finally looked at me, his dark eyes intense. "That's because it is. Not alive in the way you and I are, but it senses patterns. It understands connection, logic, and emotion. It's a networked intelligence, an archive of information from someone, or something, that existed long before us." My stomach twisted. The thought of something ancient, sentient, and powerful in our hands was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. I felt the old familiar fear creeping back. Panic about inadequacy, about making a mistake. But it was drowned out by adrenaline. This was bigger than bills, bigger than heartbreak. This was about survival, understanding, and the unknown. We spent the next hours testing the cube's reactions. Every time we synchronized our thoughts, it responded with subtle changes. A glow here, a hum there, a shifting pattern that hinted at something more profound beneath its surface. Alexander instructed me to focus on emotions, recall memories, visualize concepts, try to connect. It was exhausting, mentally and emotionally. By late afternoon, I felt drained but strangely exhilarated. "It's like it's reading us," I said, wiping sweat from my brow. "Our emotions, our intentions." Alexander nodded, his expression unreadable. "It's not just reading. It's communicating. We just don't understand its language yet." Then came the knock. At first, I froze. There shouldn't be anyone here. We were supposed to be hidden, untraceable. Alexander's hand went to the table, brushing against the cube as if drawing strength from its presence. The knock came again, soft, deliberate. He gestured for me to stay back. Moving slowly, he approached the door, peering through the peephole. Outside was a man in a black coat, hood up, gloves on, standing perfectly still. No car, no companions, just him. The kind of presence that sends chills straight to your spine. Alexander stepped back, signaling me. "Vivian, lock the doors. Don't open it." I obeyed immediately, heart hammering. The man didn't leave. He just stood there, silent, unmoving. Then a folded envelope slid under the door. Alexander picked it up carefully, unfolding it with gloved hands. Inside were 2 things: a single photograph and a note written in neat, chilling handwriting. The photograph showed a security camera feed from our safe house, time-stamped from the night before. We were asleep in the living area, unaware that anyone was watching. The note read, "We know what you have. We know what you've done. Do not make us repeat our visit. The cube is not yours to keep." My hands shook as I read it aloud. They've been watching us. They know where we are. Alexander's jaw tightened. "Yes, and now we know they're willing to escalate." He set the envelope down carefully. "Vivian, we can't stay here. Not another night. Pack what you need. We move to the second safe location. It's more secure, underground, and monitored. But we leave in an hour." The next hour was a whirlwind of movement. Bags packed, laptops and research files secured. The cube carefully placed in its protective case. Every sound outside felt amplified. The city no longer a distant backdrop, but a threat. When we finally left, the streets were silent, except for the faint hum of the black SUV, which we imagined was still there somewhere. The second safe house was everything the first was not. Cold, sterile, and unwelcoming, but fortified, with multiple layers of security. Cameras monitored every entry point, and a reinforced vault in the basement was where we set the cube. Alexander keyed in codes and encrypted our devices, then finally exhaled. "We're safe here," he said, though his voice lacked conviction, for now. I sat on a steel chair, exhausted, letting the reality sink in. This is much bigger than I thought. We're not just protecting a cube. We're protecting knowledge, power, maybe even lives. And we're being hunted.